How's it
There
going?
you go. How are you?
Yeah, great. How's everyone?
Good. Long time no see.
I know, it's been too long.
We were just reminiscing about our grass ground. Was that what
The
it was?
grouse
Grouse
grind.
Grass
grind.
grind.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering. Something popped up like a photo of that for me in my phone or something, and I was like, what was that called?
That was
Oh my
What were we doing?
So,
gosh.
Ridiculous.
so
Yeah.
for the lady ballers who don't know what the grouse grind is, in 2015 we were at the Women's World Cup in Canada, and we met Lindsey for a shoot that we were doing, and we decided to hike this 2-mile mountain. It took us like an hour and a half, right?
What was the vertical on it? It was
Like 2,800 feet
yeah,
in 2 miles,
Yeah.
which is extremely steep.
yeah.
And so we're trying to talk to her as we're going up this mountain, and we're being filmed. And we're just out of breath the entire time. So it was just such a funny experience.
I would do it again. I would totally do it again.
Yeah.
That's the pro athlete in you.
Well,
That's
what's
what it
funny is that before we went with you, we went like the day or two before to test run it. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we did the whole thing, and then we knew what we were getting ourselves into with you.
Yeah.
We were like, here we go again.
So anyway, where are you right now?
I am in Philadelphia, so that's where I live. And so not typically I would have quite a bit of travel, but obviously given the circumstances,
Yeah.
like been reduced quite a bit. So
Mhm.
yeah, just chilling in Philadelphia and hanging out and sometimes calling games from a studio, but also sometimes in my house, which was
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that. Like, do you just watch the game as everyone else is on the TV, or do you have a separate like video screen that you're looking at?
Yeah, no, we do call it from the same that you all are watching from, but we also have the ability, like it's pretty cleaned up right now because I've had about a month off or so from actual calling games. But I can't tell you, in this like office room, I had like gazillion wires because I had ESPN set up, and it was like we have a talkback box which has all these different things that you can talk to the producers, directors. We'd have like a Zoom monitor so we can see replays and also see our play-by-play. And then I also work with Nashville and MLS, so I was calling those games. And for ESPN, we didn't do any on TV camera stuff, but for Nashville, I did. So I had this like huge light, and same thing, Zoom, calling it off of a monitor. I mean, it was wild. So, but
That is
honestly,
insane.
like, talk about pivoting.
Yeah.
It worked out, and like there's a few glitches, right? But like, yeah. Sorry, there's a dog barking, and my AirPods are like on their last leg, and it would be terrible for me to put those in. So.
I thought it was my dog at first, and then I was like, oh, maybe it's Carly's dog.
Do you think it was a lot more challenging commentating from home than traveling and doing it in person?
Well, the in-person, you're there, it's like, it's live, right? You get the energy of the stadium.
Yeah.
As an analyst in particular, you can see the entire field, so you can see stuff that's going off the ball. So there's a lot more you can get into in terms of like tactics or why certain things are happening compared to sometimes when you're just calling it off a monitor. We do have different camera angles. I should say that, like when we have it set up with Zoom, we do get to see kind of like the 18 to 18. So I can still see some different things, but it's just challenging without the energy. So it's really about kind of getting yourself pumped up and like,
I was going to say, you got to celebrate hard by yourself.
Yeah.
And I think the only other thing is too, is that if you're not there with your play-by-play, like that's definitely a relationship. And so, and typically, even if you are social distance in a studio, you can like wave, you can be, looking at each other the majority of the time while you're calling games or not. And when you're at home, you're like trying to like in the Zoom box, like, but, and there's also a little bit of a delay, right? Because it's technology. So anyway, it's still fun. And like, it was amazing more so to figure out how like ESPN, Nashville, all these different companies could like pivot and make it work, right? And like bring work to
it's
people.
really impressive.
Yeah.
Did you know that, or well, in your playing days, did you have an interest in becoming like an analyst of the game and calling games, or is that just like what ended up becoming the next step for you to stay connected with soccer?
Well, originally I was doing like a ton of fitness stuff because that was kind of like my story of growing up in Indiana. I like started string training in high school. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna coach young kids in the gym, help them prevent injury. And that was more of like, I did that for a couple of years after playing. And I was living in DC at the time, was gonna buy into a few gyms and started some different programs. And I just realized like, okay, I mean, I like working out, but like, I don't want to spend all my days in the gym. And like, I was feeling further, I needed a little bit of a break from soccer when I finished or retired, but like I was feeling further away from the game than I wanted to. And I was like, I don't want to buy the gyms. I don't want to be part of like a brick and mortar. And all of this has kind of happened like as time went on. And the entire time that I had retired though, and even before I retired, Kate Markgraf Sobrero, for people who know like the 99 World Cup and everything, now the general manager of our US women's national team, she was in commentating, and she was always like pushing me to get involved. And I was like, oh, now I'm doing the fitness stuff. Like I couldn't do two things or something. I was just kind of like denying it. And then when I kind of realized, well, like, you know, this is kind of like our climbing up the mountain. I also climbed Kilimanjaro in 2017.
Oh yeah.
Very similar.
Wow.
So similar.
So it was that period of time when I was like, okay, I definitely don't want to be a gym owner. I definitely don't want to be like doing the soccer program full time. Like, let's take a step back. And then I climbed Kilimanjaro, and that just became a lot more clear. Kind of sounds cliche, like, oh, you gotta climb this mountain, and then like, woo. But it's kind of how it happened. And then afterwards, I just reached out to some of the people that Kate had put me in touch with throughout the years. And I was just like, hey, can we give it a go? And LOL, so many funny, like it's like definitely its own craft, right? Like
I was gonna say, were you? I feel like I'd be absolutely horrific, like especially the first time. Yeah, what was that like?
Well, I don't think people understand how much of a craft it is. Like, yes, like I can talk soccer, right? I can talk soccer all day, but you're live. You have to be succinct. You want to talk about the game. There's so much studying involved to know the players. And also, like, you have a relationship with your play-by-play. You have producers, directors in your ear that you're talking back to during the game while you're live, right? There's so many things behind the scenes that are taking place, and you have to have inflection in your voice. There's energy, right? There's like for 90 minutes. And no, it's terrible. First of all, it was like college soccer that I hadn't seen in a while too. I was like, whoa, what's happening here? Like both defenses are on the 18-yard line. Why are the midfielders dribbling at each other? Like, what is happening? And also like like my play-by-play guy was like yelling like over the top. Like there's just so much going on, and I was like, let's check out this corner kick, right? No, so it was terrible. It was so terrible. And also I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. This is awesome. And then I just kept saying yes, and
that's so cool.
Fingers crossed that opportunities would come. And then
did you have to take like classes on it, or was it just all like just practice and just doing it more and more?
Most of it at the beginning is practice, and then now I have like a particular coach that will review games with me, and it's a lot more like, it's just like playing actually. Like all of the lead up, watching yourself back, right? Hearing different, and so now it's like fine tuning, because I have like reps now, and now it's about like, okay, how can you refine all of those things? And there's always something, right? There's always something in terms of the way you analyze stuff, and then also how you speak for 90 minutes too. So
I was going to say, do you think that you have better knowledge of the game now than when you were a player? Like not factual knowledge, but like from an analytical standpoint and field vision. Do you feel like you've gotten even more?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yes and no. The way that I look at the game is a little bit different. Like as a midfielder, like there's particular players that I'd watch and just watch how they receive the ball, what foot, right, what angles they're approaching the ball. So, and now it's a little bit more of, I would say like a holistic view, because I'm curious about what's going on off the field, why certain players maybe aren't doing well at the moment. What is like, I'm using my experience as a player, what it would be like to give some personal thoughts on the game, but also then like, this is what's happening, this is what the coach put out, right? So it's a little bit, the way that I analyze the game and view it now is totally different too, I guess is how I'd put it.
Is it weird like critiquing your friends? I remember when we spoke with Leslie Osborne, she said it like, you just have to kind of like step back and not take it, like hope they don't take it personal and hope they understand that you're doing your job just like they are.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. it is not so much. Like I just enjoy critiquing the game, and like I think most players at that level know if they don't play well, and if they get upset, they get upset, right? And now I'm far enough away that there's still like a good amount of players that I played with and were good friends, but there's also like a number of players that are coming up that I'm like, sorry, that's just not that's not gonna cut it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and obviously I'm not there to destroy people, because that's like not the purpose. Purpose is just to like enjoy it, but also bring the critique on like what could be better. But what I would say is interesting, even in just like the last few years, which is awesome, is the fans. That it's like, it is vicious. So there's so much more than just the game, right? Obviously we're in a period of COVID, we're in a period of like social justice, right? Like there's just, and I would really feel like a responsibility to talk about those things, right? In a way that's like, not just giving my opinion all the time.
Yeah, discussion.
We should be discussing that, and I think there's a responsibility there. But I will tell you, the women's soccer fans are vicious and across the board, and it totally makes sense, especially compared to the men's. And because we've had to hold like the game and like move the game forward and hold it so gently for so long and protect players, right? And fight for equality. I mean, I've been through all of that, 3 pro leagues, women's national team. But goodness, they like, you say something about a player they like, it is poof. And it's no. They don't agree.
They're
with,
super
like,
passionate.
Totally. And they're like, you're wrong. And I'm like, okay, perfect. I appreciate that.
But you know what's cool? You're just getting them to talk like and have a conversation about it. Like that's what's so great. It sparks like discussion amongst all of those Facebook groups that I'm part of. Like I see like one person says, oh, they shouldn't have put, you know, so-and-so in the game. And then there'll be a thread of people like going off, and I'm like, it's nice to see all the sides. Like,
and
it really is.
Yeah, people are talking about the game. They're curious about it. And it's like, great. That's totally fine. And also like, that's your opinion and you've never set foot. So it's like, it's fine, but we want people to talk, right? We want people to talk. We want people to be out there. We want people to watch. So it's great. So.
Have you noticed the environment and the atmosphere in the games changing from when you played till now? I mean, of course, obviously, like
the support, I would just say that the support that you're starting to see. I mean, even when we were just talking about the 2015 World Cup, right? Like we saw, what was it? Germany beat Thailand in I think the opening match, and was it Thailand? I think, and also our women's team, right? Like we won 13-0 in the 2019, but more so in the 2015 because there's been a lot more parity. I use that as an example. You were seeing teams still wearing some like of the men's, the men's hand-me-downs, right? Like you're just like, wait, what's going on here? And so it's just highlighted how much of a discrepancy there was, and even in a short amount of time, how much that has closed, and the fight to get more federations to put more money into their women's team. I mean, I was playing, Pia Sundhage was our coach, right? Now she's a Brazil coach, and they're like really pushing for, or they have, I mean, I think there's some like inner workings there, but like the pay equity in Brazil for women. But then Pia's going to take the knowledge that she learned from us and what that was like and bring it there. So you're just going to see the gap continuing to close, and the game's better. The players are better. The game's better. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
So are you going to be covering the Challenge Cup at all?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope to do all of that. Yeah. I mean, they're still like figuring out all the details. We don't even have a schedule or anything. So we just did the NWSL draft. Gosh, when was that? 2 weeks ago now, a little week and a half ago. So, which was awesome, and like really successful draft for the league, in my opinion, even though it lasted 5+ hours.
Yeah, everyone, I saw that on Twitter. People were saying, they're like, oh my God, it's 5 hours.
Yeah, we're still going.
You were in person for that, right?
Yeah, we were down in Florida at a studio. Nice. So yeah, there'll be the Challenge Cup first, and then it'll have a regular season, obviously, with like a little bit of, I think there's going to be a break for the Olympics. So yeah. So
are there any standouts that we're expecting to see like be top players, you think, in the NWSL coming up? Like new rookies? Yeah,
well, you know, Emily Fox, she's been called in with the national team. She went number 1. I think that she'll do well. She was my number 1 in the fact that I think she was the best coming out in terms of being able to step onto the field and play immediately. I think there's in that top 10 that went in the first round. I think there's a lot that will that will have huge ceilings and can do well. The Washington Spirit chose Trinity Rodman, which I think was like a huge surprise for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I know she doesn't want to go by it, but if people are listening, then it's Dennis Rodman's daughter, so big name there. But she hadn't even played in college because obviously of COVID this past fall. She would have been a freshman, hadn't set foot, and then declared for the draft. And I mean, there was a lot of inner workings behind the scenes with the Spirit and her, and her family and agent. But yeah, it'll be curious. She has some U20 experience, but still like pretty unproven. But so I think that was
surprising.
Just an interesting, surprising, interesting choice. I mean, that's what you love to see, right? Like now teams are getting to places where it's really difficult for players to step in and make an impact. So like, okay, let's go for somebody young that we can hope that can get a few goals for us, and like then we can help mold, right? And like really kind of buy their time.
It's kind of wild, like that would, back when we were playing, like that would be so risky for somebody to just not go to school and go straight to the NWSL. It's so, I mean, that's the one upside of seeing that. It's pretty cool, like how that's something that they can do for a living, you know? That's pretty wild.
That's the thing that's like, I mean, we could debate about that all day, right? Like there's people that are like, absolutely don't leave. And, you know, typically I'm kind of on both sides. I'm like, yeah, hey, if you have the chance, go. And that makes more sense for you. I think it's the individual basis. I think the risky part is that there isn't any guarantee. This isn't like $1 million signing, right? That we see in a lot of the men's sport. And so that's what, if you can get your school paid for and be in school majority of the time, then I'd probably be an advocate of that still. But for Trinity Rodman, it sounded like her and her family and agents like had like spoken about it and really took time to like figure that out, and this was her best route now. Why not?
True. This is probably a dumb question, but has anyone ever gone pro and then gone back to playing college? Is that even allowed?
No, not in terms of, well, you can in terms of school,
right, but you can't go back to playing.
So for instance, like Trinity Rodman, since she still has eligibility as a or had eligibility as an NCAA athlete. Once she declared, though, even if she didn't get drafted, she wouldn't be able to go back and play.
That's so risky. Scary.
But that's why, like, there were so many inner workings behind going on that would like solidify that was going to be the pick, right? It's not like, oh, we hope I get picked.
If I was in her position, I would try to find a way to do, because like everyone's doing remote learning right now, so it's like, is there any way it could be that flexible where you can do both? Like not get a college degree and play pro, 'cause it's not allowed, but you know what I mean? Like it's interesting to continue.
No, you can do.
You could do that.
For instance, like I think that, I don't know whatever came of it, but I think the Spirit were trying to work out some sort of deal with like probably a local college.
It's great.
It will become, like, for instance, the Seattle Sounders and Major League Soccer, they have who is it with? Is it Seattle U? They have a deal that if they pick somebody that still has college eligibility, they will pay for their school because it's in-state.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So you'll start to, I don't think all endless teams do that, but I think that you'll start to see more and more teams, and we might even see that in the NWSL going forward too.
Do you think that COVID had a big impact on this draft? Like, were there more players who just didn't want to worry about college and maybe playing, who were just like, I'm just going to go to the league now?
I think it was actually, well, yes, the COVID did have a huge factor in this draft. And more so, though, it was like, okay, it became really tricky because almost everybody just became eligible. If you had played 3 years or I think if I remember, then you just became eligible for the draft, even if you registered, right? And so there was a lot of like, you had to do, at least we did too as broadcasters, but the coaches had to do a lot of their work to make sure, because players could decide if they were going to go immediately, which is report like February 1 when preseason starts, or play this spring season, because a lot of the colleges are playing, or all of them hopefully are playing a spring season, and then report to your NWSL team if you did get drafted in May. So it was like February, May, or I'm going to play and stay in the fall because I want to play my senior year, right? Or their extra year of eligibility that the NCAA granted to all these players. So like a lot of teams had to weigh their options. And without making this even longer, I'll give you an example. Like Louisville they're expansion teams, so they need players that can show up and play now because they have to fill out their roster. So again, Emily Fox, great choice as their number one because she's probably going to have a big impact and she's going to show up right at the beginning of February and be ready to play. Whereas like North Carolina, you could put Portland in there, even maybe the Spirit. There's some teams that had like their rosters filled out essentially, and they might get some players that will come immediately, maybe February or May, or they might just hold that person's rights because they know they're going to play next fall and then look to sign them before the preseason next year.
So many moving parts.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It's wild. Like, we don't need to get into all that. But
That's why it probably took 5.5 hours, though.
It did. Like, it was good. We were like asleep. We went to the next day. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have any NWSL teams that you think are going to do really well next season?
I think that Portland looks good. They won the fall series this past year. So we had the Challenge Cup, and then we had like kind of like little pockets of games for teams in the fall series. So they won the entire fall series. They did really well. I will be interested about North Carolina because they've lost some key players. Abby Delacour has gone to Man City, Crystal Dunn's in Portland. But I know you all know Paul Riley, and I played for Paul. So anytime, you know, like, listen, if you're winning the league for 3 straight years, it's really like, how do you continue to call yourself underdogs, even though that's what he does. But now they will be actually a little bit more of an underdog because they've lost some players, even though they have some good international signings.
They're back at the underdog stage.
Yeah, like it's kind of like you're lying, but okay, we'll go for it. But I mean, I would never count his team out. So, and then Houston was awesome. They won the Challenge Cup. I think they're really building some interesting stuff. And then I'd also put the Spirit. Spirit got some good. Emily Sonnet, who else? Kelly O'Hara in the off season. And they might be gone for the Olympics, but still, those are integral pieces to that team. So, cool.
Excited for another Challenge Cup. I feel like that was such an entertaining, like jam-packed little bracket series. That must have been wild.
Oh yeah,
like
every single game for us too. But like then for them to be in the bubble playing every few days, I mean, you just felt like it was just different than anything in the league, right? And they gave so many players opportunities because you had to rotate players to just keep everyone safe and healthy, especially with the amount of time off. And it's tournament style, and like in the US, we love that stuff. So it's like,
we're
awesome.
Impatient. We need you called every game of that?
Yeah, we were down in Florida and we called every single game.
I gotta be like that's a lot of soccer.
That's crazy.
It was so much soccer. And like, listen, I love soccer. I can watch soccer, but I'm not one of those people that also like remembers every little thing. You know how sometimes coaches are like, Lord, remember 2000. and like, no, I actually don't, right? And like, but that happened to me. So how do you remember and I don't? And that's kind of what this was like. I couldn't remember like 2 games before because there was just so much soccer being played. I'm like looking at my notes. I'm like, who won that game? Like Houston's winning. Okay, great. Like it was just so much like jumble everywhere that I was like, by the end, it was like, go team.
No, I have so much
soccer.
I have so much respect for you guys. Like, you have to be so mentally sharp. Like, I am so absent-minded. Like, as you saw in the beginning, I would mesh the games together and then I would forget to show up.
Oh yeah, like I mean, it was so fun and I love it. So it's like doesn't even feel like work, right? But there was some times when you're just like, I've made up a few words. Like that's not even a word.
Do you remember any of those? Any of the new words?
Or most of it, I've made up so many I didn't even know where to begin. And then, so I don't know if I'd have one in mind, but most of it is either like you lose train of thought sometimes because we would have our games because the bubble was in Utah. So, and we were down in Florida in a studio. So it was like 12:30 and 10 p.m. at night. So we were these games. So we'd go 12:30, 10, then 12:30, 10 the next day. So it'd be like a quadruple a game, and then we'd have 2 days off and then do that again. That was like what we did for a month. Wow. And so by the 3rd and 4th game the next day, it's like you're just no, you're just lose train of thought. You're like, I don't even know what I was saying to you, and like
when I forget who we were interviewing, maybe it was Rachel Daly or so on. We were like, you guys should have a reality show, but you guys should have a reality show too. Or that would be really cool. Like all the behind the scenes on that, like kind of like the newsroom on like HBO.
Totally,
that. I'll pitch it.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let's do it.
Cool.
Because this isn't like you just show up, right, for the
Yeah.
game and call it. Like you're there 2+ hours before. You're there. Like it's like there's so much inner workings behind the scenes that like.
Yeah, I cannot
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
I just love. Go ahead, Chen.
No, I was gonna say, didn't you have to take like 2,000 tests, like COVID tests or something like crazy?
Oh, that wasn't us. That would have been them in the bubble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they were like every
That's
day.
wild.
But Marissa Pilla, who did the draft with me, has done the draft for many years, and also is our sideline reporter. She was actually in the bubble, and she was like, she probably had like 2,000 tests.
Yeah.
She was on the field every day.
Wild.
Crazy.
She was like, get me out of this bubble by the
Yeah.
end.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What
So
were you
I-
gonna say, Carly?
I was just gonna say it's so cool that you stayed in the soccer world, and we've often like bringing this up because like the lady ballers that are listening, a lot of them, you know, they might not end up playing pro, but they still want to be in the soccer world or the sports world. So this is just another route that they can go, that they can be very involved and on top of what's going on, and feel a part of the soccer game, you know, moving forward in their future.
Yeah, it's, you know, and when you were asking about like how much the game has changed, like we guarantee that there's going to be so many more opportunities. We're always seeing, like I had mentioned Kate Margraf, right? She was in the broadcast world for a long time, and now she's a general manager of our U.S. Women's National Team. Brian McBride, who is a former U.S. Men's National Team, is the general manager of our Men's U.S. National Team. So historically, there's been a lot of opportunities for men when they retire to stay involved in the games, whether it's general manager position, somewhere in the front offices, broadcast, whatever it looks like, right? And coaching. And we haven't really seen that on the women's side for one reason or another. But now, as the league gets more stable, as there's leagues across the world become more stable and functioning at a higher level, I think we'll see so many more of the former players getting involved, whether again it is broadcast or front office stuff, whatever it looks like, right? So so many more opportunities. And that's one of the reasons. That's what changed a lot too, which is cool.
I love that. Do you have any advice for people who have stopped playing, and like, because you feel like we define ourselves as players, and then when the playing stops, we don't know how to define ourselves anymore. Do you have any advice for people who have either, you know, had their final senior game, or maybe they're playing and are going to retire? Like, how did you cope with that and kind of find your next steps?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because you go from like feeling like you have all these friends to like no friends because you're like, where's everybody? Like, and then for me, it was interesting having the opportunity, which I was so grateful for, playing at the highest level, but like that's operating at like the 1%. Like every day is like cutthroat, right? You're at training. It's like the smallest little details are separating you from the person next to you to fight for positions, even though they're your best friends. And so when I retired, I was still like operating like that. I was like, okay, like even like the fitness industry, I got to get better. I got to get all this knowledge, right? And like work my way up. And everyone's like, what? Chill out. Like you, and these are people that weren't even necessarily involved in soccer, right? These are people that I was doing some of the fitness stuff with that were like, no, chill out. You have all of this experience that you can like talk about, right? And utilize. And so my advice would be, if you have the opportunity, because I understand not all of us are in the same positions, but like, see what you want to do. Like there's so many avenues for soccer, and like I knew I wanted to stay involved somehow. I just didn't know exactly what that looked like, and obviously I've detoured and pivoted. But I think that's important because for me it was like I was still on this like one track like I had with like me playing. All of a sudden you just have like this whole world, and I think that's what feels daunting, but also it's also can be like, yes, okay, the avenues that are meant for me will start to like become more clear if I just like kind of chill out. And so I would, unless you know exactly what you want to do and you're clear on that, then I would say just enjoy having a lot of opportunities and feel some different things out. And there's so many avenues, and there's contacts, and reach out to people. So.
Chilling out is some really good advice, because it's true. Like we don't know when to how to shut off the switch of like, feeling like you need to compete every second of the day.
And I'm talking from like a national team perspective, but that goes to anywhere. That can be elite club level, that can be college, right? I mean, it's all the same. It's the same it's what that
Mentality.
person's experience is, right? So it's just like, yeah, chill out. There's definitely a lot of opportunity. I mean, that could be advice for all of us around the
Yeah.
world.
Chill
Especially
out.
us.
Definitely.
I feel
So,
like
yeah.
COVID taught us like everyone needs to learn how to pivot a little bit too. Like if you're so
Yeah.
tunnel visioned and focused, it's, you're going to cause yourself more anxiety and just negative thoughts. And then if you can just kind of open up your ideas of things, like it's going to lead you to have more experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree completely. Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on the national team right now? On the current roster, anyone you want to see at the Olympics? Anyone you don't want to see? I don't know if you want to say that.
Listen, I'm coming back, so get out of there, midfielders. No. I think the one that everyone's been talking about is Macario, and like what an exciting player, and also like probably like we can all chill out and like this is so exciting and like allow her the time and space to like flourish and continue to grow for sure. But yeah, I think this is probably one of the most exciting teams that we've ever seen, just across the board, the depth. And it's a conversation that has been happening, or at least was happening in these past two games, about like no one wanting to be in Vlatko's position to make this, because there's going to be some really difficult decisions, especially if you just think about like a 23 player roster from the World Cup. And then if you just cut that down to 18, and that doesn't even include Katarina Macario, the Foxes, right? All these other young players that didn't play in that World Cup and that are available now. So really tough, but also I think what I love about this team is it gives you a variety of different ways. Like you can play in a 4-3-3, play in 3-5-2. You can, still talking about Macario, who I'm excited about. She can play in the number 9 position. But that is more fluid than a typical 9. She can drop back and play in a 10. And so there's just so much, I think, versatility and fluidity within this group that we haven't seen in a really long time. And so it'll just be about how Vlatko and his staff utilize that and what that looks like. But yeah, I think it's an exciting time, because not only is our team continuing to get better, I think, but they are, but also we're seeing the rest of the world change as well. And there's funding. So, and we'll see ebbs and flows with teams like Japan, kind of in more of a rebuilding phase than they had been in the past. So you'll see ebbs and flows, but still exciting, really exciting times for women's soccer.
Are you going to go?
I'm hoping to call games, yes. So fingers crossed. However, given the situation and how it typically works, I don't think that we would necessarily travel. We just call from the studio from here. But yeah, but hell, I don't care. Like, I mean,
that'd be
that's
exciting.
so really important.
Yeah, that'd be
like,
so fun.
These are like the best players. Like, please, yes, I want to call games.
That's awesome. I want to take it back to when you were on the national team and just do like a couple like rapid fire, not really too rapid fire. Do you have a like favorite moment when you were on the team? I'm sure you have a bunch of favorite moments, but is there one that maybe like, you haven't talked about as much?
One that I haven't talked about. I'll tell you one of the wildest situations that has been talked about, but it was just to think about it. It's like, so we went to Cancun, and it was like the worst trip. Well, it was like the best trip turned to the worst trip, because we had qualifiers in 2010 in Cancun for the World Cup, for 2011 World Cup. And we're like, yes, we're in this resort, everything is great. And then we lose to Mexico in the semifinals, and only 2 teams from CONCACAF go. So since we lost in the semifinals, it was like this massive freak out. So we had to travel to Italy to play in a like a play-in game, right? So it was a away and home game. So we played in Italy over Thanksgiving, or right before Thanksgiving, flew back, and then we played at Toyota. I think is it still Toyota Park in Chicago, right? Yeah. So we played Italy at home, but in that away game, right, it was 0-0, I think, the entire time until like the last few minutes of the game. And I was sitting next to Christine Lilly, because it was right before she was retiring, and Lil kept like harping and just like going after the assistant referee, right? And after like all of a sudden like the center ref like stops the game and like comes over and like points at me.
Oh no.
And I get a yellow card, right?
No.
But like, listen, so I get this yellow card, and I mean, it became a big joke. But that time bought us a few minutes as extra time, and we ended up scoring. And that away goal was massive, because if we would have gone into the home game in the U.S., it would just put a lot more pressure. Because that away goal, then Italy was going to have to like at least win the game in front of the. So anyway, we joke about the yellow card that I got. That was actually for Christine Lilly.
Yeah.
Talking so much crap on the sidelines. As like the game changer to get us in. And then obviously the rest is history. We all know that like we went on and then ended up losing to Japan in the final and penalty kicks. But still, we were like the last team in and then like the last team out of the.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Did you have any best friends on the team at the
Oh
time?
yeah, I mean Megan Rapinoe and I were inseparable for so many years. Yeah, I mean, always bus mates, hanging out, sat right behind Christy Rampone and Abby Wambach all the time, and just like
Such legends.
Talk so much crap. Yeah, just all the time. Yeah, it was just constant jokes. But yeah, I would say, I mean, you know, I'm not going to say that everybody's friends. It's a job, and there's people that you're closer with, and there's definitely pockets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, myself, Meg, Allie Krieger, Ashlyn, great friends with all of those.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, 3. No, you go.
No, I was just gonna. What about hardest moments? Do you have like a moment that sticks out that was like very challenging when you were on the team? Whether that was an injury, something with the team, something personal, and like how you overcame that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I look back, you're kind of like the whole time it feels challenging because it's just like it's a lot, right? Like especially at that time, because it was some of it we had leagues, other times we didn't. You're on the road a lot. You'd be on the road for like 3 weeks at a time, and it's performance, right? It's performance and hoping the coach likes you in a way, right? Like you're under contract and that kind of stuff, so you have an idea. But yeah, it's like, for a lot of time you're expected to be at your best for 11 months out of a 12-month year, and it's a lot mentally and physically. But I think the toughest probably was, I knew I was getting towards the end of my career kind of in terms of the national team, but the 2012 Olympics, because I was an alternate, so we still went, we did everything, but I just couldn't play in the games. And that was just tough, because the way that I would be, I think, more suited for this type of national team now than I was then, because the way that I was as a midfielder, it wasn't like this. I was going to be running everywhere. I wanted the ball at my feet. I wanted to pass. I wanted to play make, right? And that wasn't always suited or praised all the time on what we wanted. It was like a lot more tackling and that's just not what I was going to do. And so that in general, and I wasn't really willing to compromise that, because there just wasn't. I wasn't going to be like making these massive tackles. That just wasn't going to work. So I think that was probably kind of like the toughest in general. Like the playing style coupled with how like our national team was actually playing didn't totally mesh, right? So my strengths weren't always highlighted in some ways.
Yeah, that's hard.
And then that coupled with, fortunately, being an alternate, but also feel very fortunate for that as well.
We've never heard that, where like you can't, you know, it's difficult to adapt to different styles. Like in college, we're like, all right, either you have to, or you can go to a different college. But to the national team, it's like, you don't have any other choice. So that's really, it does sound challenging.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, obviously I played on the team for a really long time. Right. And it wasn't like my skills weren't valued, but they weren't valued as much as like I felt like I had to offer to the team, right? Or different things. And that's sport, right? That's really that's just sport. So that's part of it, part of the journey as well.
Are you glad the style has kind of changed to that, like the team now?
yeah, I think that was just the evolution. I think that's the evolution. And I think there's been ebbs and flows. And please hear that I'm not like, oh, my style's amazing. And like, I just didn't fit in with like this team that won all the time. Like what? That doesn't actually make any sense either. So it's just, it's more of like, yeah, what the coach was looking for. I mean, every coach has a different idea, right? And then you have this plethora of players that have so many gifts on the field at your hands and it's just about like how to mesh and what works the best, right? And so yes, I think that shows our national team can even getting better, which is scary to think that where we are now, right? But it's fun to watch. There's, I think, more fluidity. I think it's unpredictable, and that coupled with like already the competitiveness and the intangibles that separate us every single day from other teams, it's like just outstanding and actually mind-blowing.
Do you have any advice for players who are in high school or college who are struggling with that, with trying to adapt to a different type of style?
Yeah, I think it's you know, yeah, Ellie Everbush and I would talk about this a lot because we played together, the Washington Spirit, and really one of my favorite teammates and like players to play with. And I think it's just about staying true to yourself, because I really fully believe if you're good and like you have the desires. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, right? There's luck, there's like so many different things, the timing. But I think if you have the ability to just continue working on your skill, have fun with it, and those opportunities will open up. So just enjoy it. I wouldn't try to just adapt to something else, right? Like what can you bring to the table that fits in with how the coach wants to play or the system works, and then let your stuff shine within that system, if that's the position you find yourself in.
I love that. That's great. Anything from you, Carl? Anything else?
I just want to know if you had any superstitions before you played.
Oh, totally. I'm such a weirdo. Okay? I'm not saying just because you have superstitions you're a weirdo either, but yeah, I was like such a like I'm like over in the corner like anxiety ridden, like okay, here we go, but like and also not too, but yeah, I was putting everything on the right side. I was showering before, shaving every game, like my legs, right? Everything would go on the right side before the left. Yeah, I mean.
Oh my God, you're a great example for this, because like some people say they don't have superstitions. I'm like, no, like there's so many players that have like step-by-step routines, like putting your left sock on before your right sock and like stuff like that. That's
and
great.
At the national team level, it really varies too. I mean, you see these people like, oh, and I'm very like talk about like another great friend of mine, Heather Mitz, right? Like lives outside the Philadelphia area, and whenever we were roommates, she would just almost, I don't know if we can cuss on here, but F with me big time, right? Like, so I was so tidy and like almost folded and stuff. And every time I'd leave the room, no joke, she'd just be throwing my crap everywhere. And it was like, just like,
yeah, it's hilarious.
Entertained, right? So it became like the biggest joke, but yeah, people stuffs everywhere. So wide range, right?
Yeah.
Of people who are like, yes, very particular about what's going on in their preparation, and others are like, oh, every day. It's like, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like our team was more like not shaving was our superstition.
Yeah.
So I wish we had yours.
Yeah,
I think everyone liked it more.
I like look at my life now and I'm like, I try not to have the superstition. So it's like, how would I be now that I've been removed for however long? I'm like, huh. So yeah, I mean, yeah. I feel like, yeah, you change so much. So yeah.
Do you have any 2021 goals? Whether it's professionally, personal?
2020. You know what's interesting is I feel like I had all these goals when I was playing, and now I'm like, I don't know if I have any goals. Like, it's not like that it's just like everything changed, like, right? So it's more like, I'm like, yeah, I want to do good, and I want to be the best broadcaster that I can, and like want people to enjoy the game and like fall in love with it. And like, I want to do it at the highest level, and I want to have fun. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah. And I want to do, like, help the world, right? In whatever way my strengths and gifts can help. So
I love it.
Yeah, it's kind of where it is these days.
Well, hopefully we get to hear you commentate some games this year, maybe in person.
Yeah, for
maybe
sure.
just on TV. But thank you so much for coming on, Lori. Really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness, I love you all. It's so fun. You bring so much laughter to this world. So thank you for all you do too. So this is great.
Oh,
Thank you so
Thanks so
much.
much.